It's the difference between being a firefighter and a fire marshal, right? Ideally, at some point in your business, you transition more to fire marshal. You're setting the safety standards, but you're not there to specifically fight the fires. You have people who help you with that.
Yeah.
So you're not running to the burning buildings all the time.
All the time. Yeah, just the ones that are like 4-alarm fires,
That's right?
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings, and we have a little bit of a different show today. I have Charley Mann and Len Spada in town for the Genesis Mastermind group right here in Dallas, Texas this week. And so I thought, what a great way to start off our mastermind weekend than to have these two join us in the podcast today. So gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Scott. We're here to ruin your hot streak of the podcast.
Hey, there we go. It lasted 63 episodes anyway.
To be here.
All right. So I'll just let each of you gentlemen introduce yourselves quickly. So Charley, you go first.
All right. So the real quick version is I work with law firm owners like you awesome fellas here through my company, Law Firm Alchemy. I mean, you guys know that. It always feels weird to introduce myself to the people in the room, but for the listeners at home who we have to keep in mind, I've worked with law firm owners for the past 14 plus years in, on, for, and with their firms, helping them grow and be the awesome entrepreneurs, job creators, community leaders that they are. It's fantastic work.
Awesome. And also a second-time guest on the Driven Crowd. I don't remember what episode. A good host would know this, but this is your second time on here, so welcome back, and thank you, Charley.
Thank you.
All right, Len, who are you?
I am Len Spada. I'm from the Boston area. I have a personal injury law firm. The name of the firm is Spada Law Group. We have been in business for just a little over 26 years, and we handle exclusively plaintiff side personal injury work. And we are very, I would say, prominent in the Hispanic community in the greater Boston area. It's our niche market. Most of my staff is bilingual, and happy to be here. Very official setting. I know the people watching can't see it, but it's very official.
Well, they can watch it. It's on YouTube.
Hey, they can't see all the lights,
they can't.
cameras.
See the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We'll have Charley take some pictures. He's got his camera here today, and we'll post some of those so they can see the behind the scenes. And I'm going to be nice to you today, Len. I'm not going to make you sing your jingle, your law firm jingle. All right?
That's good.
We'll just say Yamame.
Soy el abogado Spada. Yamame.
All right. So we are in town for Mastermind. I talk about masterminds a lot on this podcast, and I highly recommend everybody have a coach, no matter what industry you're in. And I think having a mastermind group, or at least a group of very open individuals that you really connect with, so you can share problems with. As you guys know, being an entrepreneur can be very lonely at times. But Len, tell us, what is the thing that you're looking forward to most this week for the mastermind group?
This particular week, well, every time I'm in the mastermind group with Charley, or I've been in other mastermind groups, I have always said, and I believe this firmly, that I get more from the group outside of the official curriculum. We get together, we'll have lunch together, breakfast together, and we ask each other questions and we talk about what's going on. So I get a lot. I really look forward when I come to them there's always a different issue that's sort of troubling me or I'm interested in. And there's always someone in the group that I want to sit down with Tim today and talk to Tim about X, or I want to sit down with Mike Monaforti and talk to him about this. So I'm really looking forward to that. Charley's mastermind group is relatively new. This is only our second time. So it's pretty exciting. So it's fresh.
Yeah.
But for me particularly, the things that's going on in my business that I'm having trouble with is budgeting, some financial issues. We've encountered some challenges over the last year. So I want to discuss that with the group. And I'm sure there are other members of the group who have encountered similar problems, and hopefully they have some solutions that will help me when I get back to the Boston area.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I will be talking about that. We just finished up our 2-day EOS annual with our firm, and budgeting and finances was high up on the list of things discussed, and got some really good goals and issues solved there. So, for me, when I come to these mastermind meetings, I think one of the things that I look forward to is the energy, right? Because what we do can be a beatdown, right? Being a business owner, being an attorney, doing all of the things, it can really drain you and sap you of energy. Mm-hmm. And so I have yet to leave any kind of mastermind meeting where I'm around other law firm owners and not be excited, not have, my cup refilled, if you will.
That's right.
And so that's one of the things I always really look forward to. The other thing is, if you're in a good mastermind group, people just really, open the curtains, and you get to see like, hey, these are real problems. There's zero bravado, right? There's zero, we're going to be on pace to make X number of dollars this year, when it's, maybe a third of that.
Right.
And so I think having that group where you can be completely open and not really worry about people judging you for the issues you're having is an amazing place to be. So that vulnerability, openness, and then the energy that you get from it is always really, really refreshing for me.
I agree with you. And on the downside of that energy is I have come back from masterminds so energized that it's now a running joke in my firm that when I come back in on a Monday morning, people on my team are a little bit hesitant to engage in conversation because it's usually early morning. I'm really excited about some of the things that I've learned. I've had a few cups of coffee, and I'm just waiting for team members to open that door and come in. And one of the other downsides is, somebody asked me this once before, a younger lawyer, what advice would you give if I was joining a mastermind? Is realize that you're going to come back with maybe 5, 10 or more ideas.
Yeah.
When I first joined a mastermind several years ago, I put it on myself to try to implement them all. Oh, yeah. And it was a recipe for disaster because you start to feel de-energized, and you get down on yourself that, I only implemented 6 out of the 10. Well, that's just way too ambitious.
Right.
I would suggest you come back from a mastermind with just a few action items that are going to move the needle in your firm, and stick with those. And then you'll feel super accomplished if you then go back to, if it's a quarterly mastermind or, twice a year or whatever it is, when you go back and you can actually say, I took these ideas, I worked on them, and we really did something. And then you use that old cliche, you eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a mistake a lot of people make when they first get into masterminds is to do too much.
Absolutely.
Or try to do too much.
Yeah.
And when you do that, nothing ever gets completed, right? You get 70% of the way, 80% of the way, and then you start focusing on something else because it's more fun. Or at least that's how I was. In fact, my team came up with a rule. I have priority projects, which are the ones that I can work on. And then I have an idea board. They actually created a link for me. So I could just click on my favorites. There's a link there. Click that, and it has a space for me to write out my idea. I can flesh it out as much as I want to there, but it's so it doesn't get lost. And then it goes on the ideas board. Scott's not allowed to work on anything from the ideas board until one of those projects on the priority list is complete and gone.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah. I abide by it most of the time. Most of the time. All right. So Charley, you are leading the mastermind. What's the thing that you are most looking forward to heading into I think this is our third in-person meeting, right? Group. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
In the preparation, it's funny you use the word energy, Len, because in the preparation for something like this, or Scott, you first talked about energy. Jenny's our program director. She's fantastic. She's the one who makes sure that this whole thing really runs. We talk about energy management all the time because I've been in mastermind groups as well. I'm in a mastermind group, and that energy management of how do we make sure that everyone is engaged, that there's something on the agenda that we know will keep the energy moving forward. I mean, how many people have come back from lunch and you see the yawning faces, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a big question mark there of what do you, as someone who is facilitating the group, how are you planning for that ahead of time? knowing that people are going to have their carbohydrates in them, and we need to re-ramp on. There's a quote that I really like that I actually heard from Jalen Hurts, the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I realize I'm saying that in a Cowboys town. Yeah. So we'll say he said it, and I don't know the real attribution on it, which is be the thermostat, not a thermometer. Right? We're there to set the temperature, not just take the temperature. Because if you want to come into a space where everyone's coming, you've spent the last 4 months between meetings implementing, outputting on energy. To come into a room like that, it would be very easy to say, okay, let's settle in here. Let's have a nice time together. But I want to create a room where we come in and everyone's energy comes back up. So that way, yes, you do go back to the office on Monday, Len, and I'm sorry to the Spada Law Group team. And you do go back and you're energized and you're excited, renewed, reinvigorated, because that's so important, just having that energy in your life.
Another thing that energizes me, not just getting a new idea, but there's really some comfort in knowing that other people have walked through that problem before. Mm-hmm. Because, Scott, you alluded to it, that it can be lonely being an entrepreneur or being a firm owner, Yeah. And not lonely in the sense that there aren't people around you, but lonely in the sense that there are not, your peers may not be with you. And there may not be people who know anything more than you do about this particular problem. Mm-hmm. So I get comfort knowing that I'm not the only one who, for example, budgeted so incorrectly, in a prior year, because you're basically saying I did a poor job at something, and we're all pretty competitive attorneys in this group. None of us like to lose. Many of us have played competitive sports, or and just felt that need to always be on and do a good job. So to actually sit there in front of a group and say, I was terrible at this, as a result, it cost me serious money, and I want to get better, and somebody else looking at you and be like, I did that 4 years ago.
I paid twice as much tuition money on that.
Right. And here's how I got myself out of it over the next year or two or whatever. So there's a lot of energy that comes from that.
Well, and that's the concept of the mastermind as well, is the idea, let's say it's a problem that everyone is facing, and there's not a person in the room who has a specific solution. By bringing all the people together, you have that extra mind. So let's say, we have 12 firms in the room tomorrow. All those 12 firms can put their minds together, create the 13th mind, which is the mastermind in the group. And usually that problem can be solved, even if it's something entirely new and novel. For example, we're all thinking about AI and its application in all of our respective businesses and in your law firms. Well, it's brand new. It's cutting edge. I mean, Len, you've done a lot with AI already, but it's varying levels of it. There will be a mastermind moment in there where an idea that did not exist in anyone's mind prior to that meeting will all of a sudden come forward because these ideas are collecting. And really it comes out of Len's mouth. Maybe it comes out of Scott's mouth. Maybe it comes out of someone else's mouth. And that mastermind moment happens right there. And that's really thrilling.
Yeah, it really is. I think too, at least the way this mastermind's set up, and a lot of different masterminds, is, we go through hot seats where you get up there with the biggest challenge that you have or that you're facing or that you want to work through, and you basically lay it out. Here's the issue I'm having. Here's how we got to where we are, and here's my thoughts on how to solve it. And a lot of times that is not the real issue. Mm-hmm. The real issue is something completely different that you were just blind to, either because you're just emotionally biased in the business, right? That really comes up when we start talking about employees. Yes. If okay, I'm having this issue. Okay, well, you don't have an issue there. You have an issue with the person, right? And so I think having that ability to get up there and hear outside perspectives is huge. And it's so funny. I may struggle with something, and as soon as I get up there and start talking about it from the hot seat, before anybody says anything, I know what the answer is. Right? Because I've had to sit there and think through it to be able to present it in a way where they can try to help me, and it becomes very, very clear. And you can almost see it on people's faces, and then everybody starts smiling like, okay, what's your next issue since you just solved that one?
Well, I have a director of operations. Her name is Michaela. You've met Michaela.
I have. She's great.
I don't know if you have. So she tells me that I'm a verbal processor.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
Which she had to explain what that, in fact, that was. But she'll sometimes at one of our meetings be watching me speak and she'll be smirking, and I look at her and she'll be your verbal processing. I'm just going to let you riff. And she's right. I can sometimes solve things or even create things while discussing it.
Yes.
So it's I never knew there was a term for it, but it sounds like you as well are a verbal processor.
So at our EOS 2-day annual, you commit to either start or stop doing something. And I am very much a verbal processor. And then especially on Zoom, that makes it worse because people can't like feel, how I'm riffing on something. They can see me, but it's just different, right? You don't feel that energy. And so what I agreed to stop/start doing is telling people like, hey, let me just think through this out loud, as opposed to, hey, here's what I need you to do, right? Because I might start off with an idea, like a case strategy, right? Okay, well, all right, so for this, we need to do this because X, Y, Z, and then that will make this happen. And so people are over here writing down like, wait, hold on, am I supposed to be doing this, or are you just thinking out loud? Like, what's going on here? And it confuses everybody.
Right.
And so that was one of the things that I must start / stop doing, is just verbal processing without giving anybody any clues that I'm actually verbal processing.
Well, we can talk about this tomorrow at the mastermind, but AI can really help a verbal processor take a riff and create a bunch of different things. I mean, I would say 5 out of the last 6 standard operating procedures that we've come up with at the firm have been complete dumps of information and thoughts that I've had.
Yeah.
Whether I'm in my car driving 2 hours to our Springfield office, it's amazing that what you can do with your thoughts and the structure of AI and chat or Otter AI or whatever it is, that whatever product you're using, so much can be done with it. And that might be something that I'll discuss tomorrow and Friday.
Yeah, well, it's perfect to not tell everyone what's going on, but Friday morning, we're going over AI because it is so important, right? It is important to put space for what is valuable. So I remember back at the March meeting in Northern Virginia, that was the first time that I talked about using recordings, transcribing them in Otter, and then that can process into an SOP for folks. And a couple of people did some stuff in the room. You just went full bore sprint on that.
I went crazy on it. And the things that I have been doing, and now I believe I'm the oldest. Am I the oldest member of this mastermind? I think I am.
Close, but not.
Not okay. Yeah. Well, that makes me feel better. I'm definitely at that age point where people are surprised that I'm as interested in AI, that I'm not fearful of it, that I'm engaged with it, I'm using it. So, you would think it's just a younger person's game, but you can get so much out of it. You really can.
Yeah.
But it's what you put into it too. The whole, we'll talk about prompt engineering and training your own models, and it's really cool.
Oh, it's very cool.
What you can do with it. And, we use a product called FileVine, so we're using that, and we'll talk about that.
All right, so I want to switch topics just a little bit here. Charley, you're a relatively new entrepreneur, a year and a half-ish. What is one of the scariest things that you've faced being an entrepreneur?
Oh, I mean, it would have been hiring Jenny. Because when I hired Jenny, the whole thing was built on a revenue model when I first started that was me and an executive assistant. And then when I ultimately knew, hey, I really wanted to have a mastermind group, there were things that I wanted to put together. There were people that I wanted to work with. There were programs I wanted to develop. And I decided, okay, I'm going to hire Jenny. Hiring people is not free, as we all know, right? Yeah. There was no revenue from Genesis. There was not a single member in Genesis when I hired Jenny, knowing full well, okay, if this completely flops, I will have to figure it out. Now, I did trust myself. I had the vision, I had the plan, I knew what I wanted to do, and I was willing to do whatever it would take to make it happen because I knew what was possible. But hiring her and looking at that budget for the next year and going, well, maybe I won't pay myself as much next year, and we'll figure out another way through this. And obviously it worked out, but that was an unnerving moment. It was probably 6 to 10 months earlier than I had planned on doing anything like that. But when the moment it calls, you have that put up or shut up. Like, am I going to do this or not?
And knowing Jenny, she was not much of a risk. Your business model must have been a risk, but I can't imagine having the ability to hire Jenny. And for the most people listening to this or watching this, they don't know Jenny, but she's exceptional at what she does. So to have the ability to hire a star, I mean, a lot of people use that term a lot, superstar. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
that's a risk you jump in and you take.
In hiring her, it was that
business was a risk. She wasn't.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And I appreciate that because yes, all kudos to Jenny. She was a slam dunk. I knew we were going to work really well together. I knew that we had a similar vision of if we're going to put on a program like this, there's no such thing as cutting corners. There's no such thing as sloppy choices. We need to pay attention. We need to be very, very intentional. Intention is one of our core values at the business. And it was just that intense alignment that, it was an easy hire from an alignment point of view. And
it says a lot about you as well, because even though Jenny knew you and knew what you were capable of, you didn't have anything to show her yet for success.
We haven't made any money yet, but I promise we will.
I mean, you really should, sit back and appreciate what she thought of you. She had enough belief in you and your abilities and what you could do that she too took a risk.
She did.
She's took a job with someone that to her was a known commodity, and you both were taking risks, but they were calculated and they weren't really that great.
Yeah. That's fair to say.
Yeah.
We knew we would figure it out.
And I think really for any business owner, making those decisions when you're betting on yourself, like you don't have the cash flow. You had zero cash flow. You don't have the cash flow to be able to afford the decision that you're making, but you're betting on yourself and you're betting on the future that it will work.
Yeah.
And I think even to this day, there's hires that I still make where I'm like, man, this money could really go elsewhere in the budget that could really, increase either new cases or leads or whatever it is. But I know this is the right move to either operationally or marketing wise or whatever to make that move. And so we're going to pull the trigger and we're just going to know this is going to work out.
Right. And people listening, the way you just articulated that, it almost sounds like there are times you make the decision where you're not confident you made the right decision immediately.
The vast majority of
the vast majority.
Yeah.
So you make it, and you know that you have to. I think what really separates people from people who don't want to take the entrepreneurial road and people do is being able to make a decision. There's so much, paralysis by analysis, and I've been very guilty of that. I have waited. I have never hired too early and regretted it.
Yeah.
But I have waited too long and realized, God, I really wish I had made this hire 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So, we may be getting better at what we do, but we still question ourselves. We still question decisions that we make. But we enjoy the risk. It's the juice. It's really, I think it's what we enjoy about the whole process of being entrepreneurs. And we're entrepreneurs in a space unlike Charley's. Charley's helping us, but you and I are legal service providers.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, we have to provide excellent client service.
Sure.
So, we walk that fine line. We're entrepreneurs, we're attorneys, we're both.
Yep.
But I think it's tough. It's really tough. I don't think a lot of people other than our families really get how tough it can be.
Yeah. And I think too, I don't gamble, you don't gamble. We gamble every day with what we do at work, right?
On
With
ourselves,
every business
and our
decision,
firm and our
as
team.
well as every case that we sign up.
Yep.
And I think, we've gotten used to being able to make those decisions with maybe 80% of the information we need, maybe 50% of the information we need. But we're also not making these decisions that are putting the firm at risk, right? We have this level of tolerance, and typically it's a decision that we can either back away from or we can transition from and know that like financially we're going to be okay, but this is what we really think is going to drive things forward. So there's a responsibility there too. Whereas early on, I mean, I was having to make some decisions where if they went the wrong way, like we may be shuttering the doors.
You're going to work for another firm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't ever want to have to be making those kinds of decisions, but occasionally you're forced to as an entrepreneur. You can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, look at all the businesses during COVID.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a perfect example. Nobody's going to predict that. And so, yeah, I think the more experience you get, the easier it is to make the decision. But I don't know that it's any less stressful to make those decisions.
Yeah, and the numbers get bigger too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same problems, just more zeros attached
more
to them,
zeros
right?
attached. And
Well, at Amazon, they talk about the difference between a one-way and a two-way decision. You know, you're either walking through a one-way door or a two-way door when you make this decision. If you walk into that room and there's a giant fire in it, is this the type of decision that we can walk back out of it?
Right.
Or you got to figure out how to put out the fire.
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And you know, I think entrepreneurs necessarily are either naturally or learn to be really good problem solvers.
Yes.
Because that's the vast majority of what I know. That's what I do each day is solve problems, whether it be business problems, legal problems, whatever. I think that's just a skill set that you either are born with or you end up learning how to excel at, because if you can't solve problems, you're just not going to be a very good entrepreneur unless you hire really good problem solvers to surround yourself with.
You become a problem recognizer instead of a problem solver.
Right,
It's the
exactly.
difference between being a firefighter and a fire marshal. Right? Ideally, at some point in your business, you transition more to fire marshal. You're setting the safety standards, but you're not there to specifically fight the fires. You have people who help you with that.
Yeah.
So where you're not running into the burning buildings all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Just the ones that are like 4-alarm fires,
That's right.
All right, Len, how about you? What's scary? What's something scary that's happened to you as a business owner? Plenty of scary things as a lawyer, I'm sure. I know I have them, but as a business owner.
Well, my backstory is I had a partner when I first started the firm, and he passed away at 18 years into the business. So I've been, now 8 years without him. I was the trial lawyer. I was the one who was handling the complex cases. I was the one going to court. I was the one trying the cases, taking the depositions. And he was the rainmaker. And he was a very good rainmaker. So when he suddenly passed away of a heart attack, I was confronted with, okay, I know I'm a good trial lawyer. I had zero experience, no confidence, and subsequently learned I wasn't very good at being a businessman as well. So that was my biggest challenge. Is I now have, my partner has passed away. I now have a team of employees who are depending on me to not only try the cases and handle the litigation, but to make rain and bring in new business. I learned that, but that was the most terrifying part of it. I was not afraid to go to court on a case and try a case, where a lot of people, that's a very scary endeavor for a lot of lawyers.
Yes, absolutely.
That wasn't for me. That was my comfort area.
Right.
And all of a sudden now I had to learn what marketing meant, how I could implement it, how I paid for it. And I credit masterminds and getting to know people like Charley and Ben Glass with helping me with that. But that was terrifying for me because I was deep into my career as a lawyer. And now all of a sudden, I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I had to learn how to keep the firm afloat and attract new clients.
That's
so that
a
was
really
scary.
uncommon story, though, Len. Because most of the time when I work with a firm that has the partnership, you have the business development partner and you have what we might call the technical partner. You were the technical partner, the legal operations partner. And it's very rare for that person to ever transition over into the business development side. Obviously, it was a tossed into the deep end.
Forced on me.
Situation. But even then, I mean, making that transition, credit to you, not an easy thing to do. Was it truly just you knew how to operate out of raw necessity and you were going to figure this out hell or high water?
It's interesting because you try to do a postmortem on this,
Right.
No pun intended. I mean, I did not mean it that way, but it's just, but it's exactly what looking back on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it? How did I learn? I think fear really pushed me, thankfully, in the right direction.
Yeah.
I had no mentor because I had mentors when I was younger, but then once I started my own firm, I had a partner but I didn't have a mentor. Nobody was teaching me, how to go make rain, how to develop business, how to market, how to advertise, none of that. So once my partner passed away, I began to look into, who could I have as a mentor? What are people doing? And somehow I came across a solicitation by Ben Glass, and I remember the cost of doing it, the expense.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh God, can I do this? And I remember Ben telling me, if we do our job well enough, the amount of money you're spending to do this will be a
rounding error.
A rounding error, and you won't even think of it. And I thought he was,
good sales guy.
I thought he was full of it, right? But he turned out to be 100% true. So I think I was just fortunate to move on an instinct. I also felt like if I didn't do something, I might have had to go back into a firm, a practice with other lawyers. It's not something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I wanted to do. So it worked out.
So Scott, let's turn the table on you. Scariest for you?
A kidney transplant 2 months in to opening the doors wasn't exactly
only
calming.
2 months in.
Yeah, it was me and a paralegal. And I basically gave her the keys to the firm, and I was like, please keep us afloat here. Please don't do anything. Please don't commit malpractice. No, I mean, I was in the hospital for 3 days, and I think I was working on day 2. I had my computer on, and I was asking her questions and that kind of stuff. And then I was out of the hospital in 3 days. So I was working from home. One of the things that, thankfully, whenever I started the firm, one of the things I really wanted was systems and processes. And because I hadn't really had that at the other firm that I helped start. And I knew that was missing. And so we went with Filevine too. And so I had worked, because when we first started the firm, I had some cases that I took with me, but obviously the phones weren't ringing yet. The marketing was just getting started and all of that. And so I had a lot of time to start building out the task flows, the processes, how we handle cases. And so Filevine was cloud-based, and I knew I wanted to be cloud-based because I knew that the kidney transplant was going to be coming up, and I wanted to be able to work from wherever. And man, that really set us up for 3 years down the road, COVID, because we didn't have to be in the office. We were perfectly fine operating outside of the office. But in terms of scary things for me, while I'd had the other law firm before, I had zero business background, right? Aaron, our marketing assistant who listens to all these podcasts and helps with editing and stuff, is rolling her eyes right now because I've said that like 100 times at this point, that I have zero business background. And so, realizing everything that was going to be involved from the business aspect, and I was working on setting up systems, I was working on marketing plans, all that stuff during the day, and then I wouldn't really start practicing law until about 5 o'clock at night because I was answering phone calls with vendors, doing this, that, and the other. And then finding the mentors and them asking me, have you read this book? Have you read this book? Do you know what this is? And I'm, no, I don't know any of these things. And then seeing the mountain of things that I needed to learn in all aspects, from how to create a budget, how to do this, how to market this, how to operationally make these things work, and HR and all the different things that you're responsible for. It was just really, really overwhelming, really overwhelming. And so thankfully I was able to find some people that were great mentors that helped me kind of cultivate that book list, and that I could call up with questions. And I think that was a saving grace for sure.
It's funny you mentioned books that help us. One of the common denominators of the groups that I've been in is everybody is a reader.
Oh yeah.
A voracious reader.
Yeah.
And I always was a reader, but not of the same material, like business books. And it's
the graphic novels, is that what you were always reading?
I was a nonfiction guy, but it was, it wasn't marketing. It wasn't Buy Back Your Time. It wasn't EOS. It wasn't Traction. I mean, it wasn't all the books that now, if you went to the mastermind group tomorrow and you asked everyone, we probably have 10 books that we've all read.
Yes.
I would venture way more than that too.
No, but the same, like you could find a common 10 that we might have all read.
Yeah,
and we share. And I just think for anyone coming up, if you're not a reader and you choose to remain a non-reader, I just don't know how it gets done.
Yeah, or at least a non-learner. right? I mean, people audiobooks or YouTube.
I
or things
consider
like
that a reader.
Okay,
I consider that a reader, but it's just not exposing yourself to great stuff that's already in print. By people who have done this before.
Yeah. Especially the ones that are still in print after 50, 75 years.
And when you have someone like Ben Glass, who's been around for so long, telling you this is a wonderful book. This book has really been helpful to me. How do you not read it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's literally business malpractice. If Ben tells you, I've read a book, I found it incredibly helpful in my career. Yeah, I do. I consider it business malpractice to not say, I have to read the book,
One of my obsessions recently, very much in line with all this, especially when you say, historical, is cultivating a canon of business books. Like these are truly if you were to ask about habits, the one book I'm going to say is Atomic Habits, right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh, you should read, also grab Tiny Habits and also grab, I don't know, there's a dozen of them, right?
Right.
What's like the one book in a category that you just assign and say, instead of reading 5 about habits, read this 3 times and then tell me what you've done with it. So I'm obsessed with the canon side of books.
That's a great idea. We should probably try to do that as a group.
We're about to visit that right here. That's my question for you, Len and Scott, is for each of you, if there was, pick a book that you would consider canonical for a category of business success. So for me, for example, copywriting, I think everyone should read The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. That should be everyone who wants to get into copywriting should go there. You can branch off past that, but start there.
It's interesting when you put me on the spot like that. Like I'll end up saying something in an hour from now.
We can interrogate it.
We can take it. Well, we have implemented EOS in our practice, as I know, Scott, you have. Not sure you have yet.
No, we're actually interesting you mentioned, Ryan McKean.
Yes.
He released The Way, which is, I absolutely love it. He was kind enough to send me an advanced copy of it.
It's an offshoot of EOS.
It is.
It's a simplified version.
Pared down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really perfect for a smaller business.
So for me, for traction would be one of those books. Buy Back Your Time would be one.
Yes, that entered canon for me. Buy Back Your Time.
Buy Back Your Time. Atomic Habits.
Yep.
You mentioned it.
So for me, I'll tell you on the leadership side of things, I don't think it's any surprise. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That was one of the first business books, I consider it a business book, that I read. And when it comes to kind of your mindset as a leader or just in general, it was an epiphany for me. I always operated more on that side of things, but to really see how Jocko was able to articulate the principle, apply it to, some military situation that he was in, but then say, okay, in business, here's how this works.
Yeah.
That really hit home for me. And you can read, Charley and I were talking about this before, you and I probably have too, Len, is a lot of business books within each genre, whether it be leadership or marketing or operations, a lot of them say a lot of the same kinds of stuff. They just package it differently.
Yeah.
Well, the way that one was packaged just really, really resonated with me. And so
I have not read that one yet.
Okay. Well, you're missing a canonical book, Len. So
have you read it?
Oh yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So another one, man, that's the first one that came to mind.
It's hard when you
stole a lot of mine.
When you start to think about it, there's so many. And
so for public speaking, for example, How to Speak Effectively by Dale Carnegie, I consider that canonical.
Yeah.
If you read that and focus on it for a couple of years, you will be a better public speaker because it is so principles oriented rather than, let's be honest, so many of the business books that get released, and it's tamped down a little bit recently, but so many of them get released. The idea is in the title. They cite one study at the beginning of it and then fluff piece the rest of the way through.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I look for, I'll drop one in your lap with this, Unreasonable Hospitality, right? That's a book that
I've read it a few times.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have my team reading it and implementing some of the concepts.
That
it's a
could
great
be
book.
Canonical in terms of customer experience.
Right.
I consider that.
Yep.
So I'll kind of give you two that are related, focused a little bit different way, but essentialism and The One Thing. Is it the one thing, the one big thing?
The one thing.
The one thing. Yeah.
Gary Keller.
Yeah. And Gary Keller, especially the one thing, that's one of those where I expected to read like the first couple of chapters. Like, okay, I got this. He pulls you all the way through that book.
He does.
And it's really, it stacks on top of each other all the way through. Because a lot of these things, I'll read a quarter of them, half of it, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Now you're just repeating yourself.
Yeah.
But I thought that one and Essentialism were two really, really, in terms of like time management and prioritization, those two were really big for me.
I love the one thing. Fantastic book. Yeah.
That it's spawned an entire, cottage industry. There are all types of offshoots of that.
Oh yeah.
By the, all trademarked and copyrighted by the same person, but it took off.
Which you should. If you have intellectual property, trademark the living daylights out of it.
And my wife has read it, and she's into that whole concept as well.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It is a weird example, sort of like you were saying, Scott, of it has essentially one idea, which is the focusing question of what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary.
Right.
First off, credit to it for the fact that I can cite that strangely worded question word for word off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But even though it's that one thing, and it's really just talking about asking that question repeatedly, toppling the dominoes, the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle.
It takes you to places we've been with other books. It takes you to the place, what's the one thing? Delegate.
That's true.
Buy back your time. It takes you to books that will give you more information on that particular topic.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's I love buy back your time. I now analyze everything I do. I used to be so involved in my own finances. Maybe that was the problem.
Yeah.
But that now I'm just delegating, and we have an accountant. We have people. I was an accountant before going to law school, so holding on to that role, I held on way too long.
Yeah. What's easy to do?
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
Way too long.
Okay, so gentlemen, we are out of time, but we do have time for one final question. We've been talking books. I always end with asking you about your top 3 books, but we'll do this. What is your favorite kind of off the beaten path book that other people may not have read? And I'll start. I will give you Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. Building a Second Brain. And that one is about organizing all of your different ideas, all of the data that you consume in a way that is put where you can find it easily and you can access it and use it. And so it's basically kind of a filing method, if you will, for all of your different ideas and all the stuff that you want to hold on to, whether it be quotes or images or whatever it is that you're researching or you find interesting articles. It's a way to store those where they're easily accessible and how to go review that stuff. Because if y'all are like me, you take a whole bunch of notes and you never go back and look at them.
Yeah.
So it's a great system for that.
I think for me, a book that really hit me, having a leadership role in my firm. The book was by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Leaders Eat Last.
Great book.
And it's a great book, and it really brought home the whole leader as a server, as being somebody in a leadership position that is serving the people that work with and for him or her. And that's a concept that I feel warmly towards, because I see how I'm trying to lead my firm, and I'm trying to do it more from a point of view of servicing and providing value to the people that work for me. How can I make this younger employee have a better work life? Not just a better work life. What can I do? How interested can I be in their life to make their life better, not just their work life? And then if you have that as a central sort of MO in your firm, you get the most. You often get the most from your employees and your team members, because they genuinely feel like they have a leader that they can respect, they want to emulate, and they too want to provide leadership to the levels below them. So that book I thought was great. Yeah.
Charley?
So there's a book, the author's first name is Austin. I can't remember the last name. It might be Neltze, and it's called 12 Months to $1 Million. And basically the book runs through a process. More or less, it's about how to set up an Amazon storefront, white label a product, and get yourself set up to make $1 million in revenue in the course of the first 12 months. And it's very detailed. It has all the principles that we talk about in growth in terms of, finding a niche that you're going to target, finding a good partner to work with, who's your product creator, et cetera, developing a reason for people to actually choose your product over others, all of that. And it just walks systematically through it. And the reason that I really like it, one, fast, kinetic, energizing, anything is possible if you put your mind to it type of read. And I will say, if you read it, you're going to start researching what product would I white label, right? It's very addicting in that way. There's a side tangent on that about how my brother and I almost started a dog supplements company because of that book. But that book it shows that there are systems to follow and there are principles you should honor. And if you do your best to stick to those and maintain the energy and the consistency over time, really, success is equally easy and very difficult at the same time. You have to do things that most people won't do, even if sometimes they are the easy choice. So a book like The Slight Edge, which talks about it's easy to make the easy choice, just as easy to make the hard choice. It's easy to read 10 pages, just as it's easy to not read 10 pages. And so if you make the series of slightly tougher choices over time, that can add up to success. So that book by Austin, I think it is Neltze, really fantastic, not super well-known book.
Awesome. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's been a joy. I look forward to hanging out with y'all over the next few days. And thank you again to everyone who tuned in to this episode of the Driven Crowd podcast. We'll see you next time.